you so much for joining with me today. I want to talk a little bit about counterfeit stamps and what the inspection service is doing to try to combat it. So just a little history about myself. I've been with the Postal Service for a total of 23 years. 17 years of those have been as an inspector. I come from a postal family. My mother, my father, and my grandfather all retired from the Postal Service. So it kind of runs in my blood. I take this job very seriously. I am the program manager for the revenue investigations team with the inspection service. So we investigate anything revenue related. Revenue is how the Postal Service operates. Revenue is how I get my paycheck. And revenue is how I'm going to hopefully get my retirement in a few years. So we take this very seriously. We're trying to do some things to combat the counterfeit postage issue. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. So as far as the revenue investigations program, our focus is basically investigating individuals and companies who are deliberately defrauding the Postal Service by not paying the monies that are due for postage. We also will investigate companies who are cheating their customers out of monies based on contracted services. So if they're a mail house and they are, having a customer pay them for 100,000 pieces, but they only mail 50,000 pieces, we investigate those instances also. Additionally, we are an advisor. Our main role is to investigate and try to prosecute, but we advise the Postal Service. So when I hear people say, well, why don't you just go fix these problems? If there's an issue with the Postal Service, fix it. We can't tell them what to do. We are an advisor to the Postal Service, and we do that a lot. They really do involve us in decisions a lot recently. When it comes to how the mail flows, how the machines work. So it's a very good collaboration that we have with them. We do work with Customs and Border Protection. We work with the FBI, we work with Homeland Security, and the IRS on our cases. And I'll talk a little bit more about specifically Customs and Border Protection in just a little bit. So I actually did this at the end of July 30th. I ran a Google search specifically for forever stamps. I was a little disappointed the last presentation that I did a Google search, and it actually gave me the number of results found for that search, and it doesn't do that now, or at least how I did it this time, it didn't show. But when I ran this same forever stamp search about a year ago, there were over 17.2 million search results. I'm imagining it's probably even higher now, just so you know. So let me ask you, you guys are all stamp experts. What's the price of a forever stamp today? 73 cents, exactly. All right, so I want you to take a look on the screen. That second from the left, the peanut stamps, if you can see it. It's saying forever stamps, $39 and 100 stamps in total. Somebody help me with the math. Anybody want to tell me how much a stamp they're selling it for? 39, okay. So I have a few goodies, and I can't run to give them to you, but can you catch? All right. So yeah, they're selling for 39. Where's the disconnect? How are they doing this? It's just mind-boggling to me on some of these things, okay? Couple more. If you look at the third listing from the left, it says USPS Forever Flag. I'm sorry. I got to move my slide because I can't see the screen. It says USPS Office 2017 Forever Stamps, 10 rolls of holiday stamps. Used, yeah. So that was the first thing I saw. How do you have a used stamp? How are you selling, again, if it's 100 or 10 rolls of 100 stamps for $150? Again, that's a pretty good discount. And then, let me ask, does anybody buy off of Poshmark? Anybody ever ordered anything through Poshmark? What did you get? No? Nobody has?
I ordered a shirt through Poshmark.
Okay. If you want to come up. So a shirt, when I think of Poshmark, I think of clothing for the most part. Why is somebody selling stamps on Poshmark? It doesn't make sense. I will give you a choice.
Is that a stamp dispenser?
It is not. It's just it's like a stress thing. Okay. Can't give you that one. All right. So yeah, you think of Poshmark, you think of clothing, right? It's amazing the sites that are selling stamps now, or that sellers are selling stamps on these platforms. Just one more, the second from the right. Forever Stamps 4 Flags, 2012. Who has a huge stash of 2012 stamps that they're holding on to? Well, okay. But are you selling them?
No.
Yes, you're collecting them. So who has a huge stash of 2012 stamps that they're selling at a discount for that? I mean, when you guys are selling stamps, I'm guessing you probably are making money on them? Trying to anyway, okay. When we do identify some of these sellers and we ask them, where did you get your stamps from? Anybody have a guess on what they tell us?
Somebody else.
Somebody else, okay. They're telling us often that they found a business that was being shut down, and this business miraculously had a huge stash of stamps that they wanted to sell to make money off of, but they're selling them at a discount. And I'm thinking with as many of stamps are being sold online, there's a lot of businesses that are failing nowadays that hold on to stamps that need to be sold. So it's amazing. But what we are actually finding is it's one of two things. It's either counterfeit stamps or potentially stamps that were got through illegal means, which would mean either stealing them, we do have occasionally that happen, or they're purchased with bad checks. Postal Service does have an issue currently with bad checks, and we do have people that come into the retail counters, buy large amounts of stamps with bad checks, and then 2 weeks later the bank says checks are bad. Yes?
Do you have that same problem with people who use credit cards and then cancel credit cards?
Credit cards, not so much. There's a little more protections with the credit cards.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So how about good stamp sellers? Obviously, good stamp sellers online. So yes, grocery stores are a place. I just pulled a few, again, from the Google search. The first two are from the Postal Service. If you look, it's a sheet of 20 for $14.60. That's the price, you know, that's not a discount. Postal will not sell at a discount. The third one over is from Office Depot. Again, they're not selling at a discount. They're buying them from the Postal Service at cost, and they're selling them for that price. The last one on the far right is from Sam's Club. You'll see there's a slight discount there, and as the video showed, they are authorized to sell them at a discount, but they take that hit. Postal does not sell them to them cheaper to resell. They're buying at full price, and they're offering the discount as a service to their customers. All right, so this is one of the slides that I stole from the labs presentation that they normally give to just kind of show you some of the types of fraud that go along with stamps. So there's 4 different categories listed there. You have production waste. So in the yellow, you'll see that big roll there. That's production waste. So we do have our legitimate manufacturers, and there's always concern that if there is some kind of an issue with the rolls, that they have waste, something, you know, tears, they're supposed to destroy those stamps. So there's always the concern that maybe they aren't doing what they're supposed to do and somebody's trying to sell those stamps. Cinderella stamps. I had not heard that term before. Anybody raise your hand, tell us what it is?
Basically, they're labels or some other thing that is made for an entirely different purpose, but people, because they're about the same size, they put them on.
Yeah.
Look like a princess.
Yep.
It could be just for decoration, any type of topic or any type of Christmas,
Uh-huh.
whatever. And if the high-speed facer cancelers, if it's on a high-bright envelope or something like that, even though those stamps aren't tagged, many times they'll just go right on through.
Yep. Okay. Would you like the mailbox or the patch?
Oh, the patch.
Okay. So yeah, I did have to look it up, and I Wikipedia'd it, and it said it's a label resembling a postage stamp, but not issued by a postal, or not issued for postal purposes by a government administration. So the example on there is actually Michael Jackson with a monkey. Not sure what that's all about, but yeah, that's your Cinderella stamps. The wash and reuse stamps. We don't see that much anymore, or at least it's not being reported to us. When I was still investigating cases in Chicago, we had received a contact by the Chicago Police Department. They wanted us to come to this building. I went there, and it was somebody that was in the real estate, just doing a lot of sending out letters, cold marketing with letters. And they said, yeah, something just didn't seem right. We wanted you to come. I go there, and he's got the business part up front, and then in the back of his office, he had a big screen TV and a lounge chair. And next to it, he was arrested for something else, but they were doing a search warrant. So came over, and Next to his chair, he had trays of stamped letters that had been returned to him as undeliverable. And they said, yeah, the stamps, they're not up in the right corner where they're supposed to be. They're in the middle on the right side. And it looked like what this guy was doing is he'd sit there and watch his TV shows or sports or whatever, and he'd take the stamps off the envelope to reuse them again.
And because they were in that position,
They never got canceled, yes. All right, and then the last one is the counterfeit stamps, which is the bulk of the conversation that we're going to have today. All right. Again, with our lab, they're a great resource for us. They are in Dulles, Virginia, so it's not too far from our headquarters. They get stamps from the manufacturers when they're released, so they keep them as a reference collection. So they've got multiple filing cabinets full of stamps that they use to compare suspected counterfeits to the genuine things. As you guys know, there's differences. There can be differences in the same stamp between the two manufacturers. So they're very aware of that. We're aware of that in the field, that we need to be cautious about potential differences. They also use the postal bulletin. You guys have access to the postal bulletin just like everybody else. There's some good information in there. My concern is that there's good information in there and anybody has access to it. So the counterfeiters can kind of have that information too. So counterfeit stamps, as I mentioned a little earlier, they're primarily manufactured overseas. We do see some smaller scale operations potentially in the US also. As we said, there's only the two manufacturers in the US, so whenever we see stamps coming into the US, in bulk quantities at least, it's always suspected to be counterfeit. There's no legitimate reason for large amounts of stamps to be entering the US. As you guys know, there's various identifying features, security features within the stamps, on the stamps, that are used to tell if it's genuine or counterfeit. Our policy is that we will not discuss the security features. You guys know them all. You probably know them better than I do. But I am not going to talk specifically about security features today, and I cannot confirm or deny if something is a security feature. We just don't do it. I mean, there's so many places out there that people can get that information. I'm not going to share it. All right? But I will say that the images themselves of the stamps are very good quality. And so you can't just look at a stamp nowadays and tell, unless they're a really bad counterfeiter, you can't tell. So without going into why, I'm going to share a few examples from the lab. One is counterfeit, one is legitimate. I will tell you which one is legitimate, which one is counterfeit, but anybody know which one is is legitimate? Sorry, legitimate? The left. Okay. Okay. Yeah, if you want to talk about it, that's fine. I will plug my ears. If you want to share with the room, that's fine. But I will say, yes, the one on the left is the legitimate. But these are items that came into the lab. So the one on the right was a submission to the lab. So it is the counterfeit one. All right. How about the vintage rose? Which one's legitimate? Which one's counterfeit?
The one on the left is real.
Correct. The one on the left is legitimate. Okay. They can be hard to tell just by looking at them, like I said. Okay. All right. How about the 2014 flags? And this one kind of gives away a security feature, but I'm not going to talk about it. The one on the left. Okay. And how about the 22 flag? Oh, I'm hearing different things. The one on the left is legitimate. I will say sometimes the counterfeiters make it a little easier for us. So if you're looking at this, can anybody tell? Yeah, they missed the S on news. Here's a little thing on this that's supposed to go up. There we go. So they missed the S. We also had an instance where instead of USPS, they put UPSP. So that was an easy one to tell. Yeah. So, it's not very often, but sometimes the counterfeiters do make mistakes that are easy for us to identify. All right. So, the statute for counterfeit postage, 18 USC 501. that first bullet point, whoever forges or counterfeits any postage stamp, meter stamp, any stamp printed upon any envelope or stamped envelope or postcard, obviously manufacturing, illegal, federal offense. The second one is whoever makes or prints or knowingly uses or sells or possesses with intent to use or sell any such forged or counterfeit stamp. That is also a federal offense. Mm-hmm.
What happens when one of the dealers here tries to sell a collection of counterfeits?
So, I will tell you, 18 USC 501 says it's illegal. Would we prosecute somebody in an instance like that? No, we would not.
Depends on who it is.
It depends on the circumstances. Our legal likes to use that a lot. It depends on the totality of the circumstances. If it's a collector, I'm not going to go after you. If you even just possessing them, not even just selling, possessing them is illegal. Yeah. We're not going to prosecute. So, but here's the key thing. What's that word in red? I don't know if you can see it. Knowingly. Knowingly. So that's our problem. Now, you guys know that they're counterfeit. You're possessing, you might sell. It's knowing. Again, we're not going to go after collectors. We're not going to go after my grandmother who might have bought stamps from somebody and they're counterfeit and she's putting them on her Christmas letters. Or the church on the corner who's sending out their newsletters, somebody from their congregation went online and thought, oh, I'm going to save my church some money. We're not going to prosecute them.
Yeah, I want to know the opposite. I want to know how many people have actually been prosecuted successfully in the you know, the big players.
The big players, there have only been a few so far, honestly. And I tell you, this knowingly is what catches us up, okay? We have to prove, there's two things. We have to prove that they knowingly knew that they were counterfeit and that they're selling them. Manufacturers, we have not indicted anybody, we have not prosecuted anybody because our manufacturers are overseas. I can't take my badge and gun to China, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But as far as the people in the U.S., it's that knowingly. So what we try to do, obviously, is prosecute. You know, we try to get prosecution on it. But if we can't, and we can't prove intent, if we can't get a smoking gun, we're going to put them on notice. So we have a form that's called a voluntary discontinuance. It's basically a letter saying, look, we've identified this issue. You may not have known that it was illegal, but now we're telling you that it's illegal. We sign and date it, they sign and date it, we file it. So if we do see them again, now we have the intent because we've told them and we have it in writing. So what is being done to combat the counterfeit stamps and labels? Because it's not just stamps, it is an issue with counterfeit postage labels nowadays too, all right? So we are, obviously, like I said, trying to get prosecution when we can. And we're working with on a bunch of different initiatives and projects and different groups. So the big one that we did is, and it's a project I worked on for several years, is we actually have a definition in the DMM of what counterfeit postage is and what is going to happen to items that have counterfeit postage affixed. So back in February of 2023, the Postal Service filed in the Federal Register to make this change to the Domestic Mail Manual to clarify what counterfeit is and how we're going to handle it. The changes went into effect last spring in 2023. Some of the things that are being done using this DMM change are rolling out slowly. But basically, prior to the change in the DMM, there was no reference to counterfeit postage. The only thing that we could use was related to mail deposited without postage. But as you guys know, something without postage is not the same as something with counterfeit postage. Counterfeit postage is illegal. It's a crime. It's a criminal attempt to defraud the post office. So now it says that anything that has and we don't call it mail because it's not mail. It's not mail if it doesn't have postage on it. So it's an item that has counterfeit postage, either a label or a stamp, can be deemed as an abandoned item and intercepted by the Postal Service and disposed of by the Postal Service. We are dealing right now, Postal is doing a lot with the counterfeit labels. It's a bigger bang for the buck. We've got all these e-commerce packages coming from China with counterfeit labels on them. $3.50 at a minimum for the smallest e-packet. So stamps are cheaper, and so they're working on the labels right now. They are doing some intercepting based on different things, but like I said, we are not doing it with the stamps. I will say that we have taken a few mailings with counterfeit stamps on them, but it's specific to investigations. We're not wholeheartedly going out and turning something on the machines to say anything that, you know, doesn't meet this criteria, doesn't have the security feature, is going to be held out and is going to be disposed of. We want to implement anything that we do appropriately, where it's not going to have a huge effect on legitimate customers who did not know better. And so that also rolls into us getting with the public and just letting them know what's going on, and letting them know if they're buying stamps at a discount and it's not from the Postal Service, don't do it, because you're going to run this risk in the future. We have the authority to do it now, but we're not doing it. So this is work that we've been doing with Customs, and we're doing it often. Customs obviously does not have the staff to look at every item that's entering the country, but when they do look at stuff and they find stamps, they do reach out to us. So the item on the left with the pallets, that's from a case in New York. Customs identified it in New York, and they turned them over, or contacted us. They didn't turn them over, but they had a box going to a warehouse. We confirmed that they were counterfeit. Customs and our inspectors went out to the warehouse and did an interview. The owner of the warehouse claimed that he didn't know that they were counterfeit. He was acting as a fulfillment service. So in this instance, these boxes had small packets with stamps inside. They weren't addressed to the buyer of the stamps. They just had a barcode on it to identify what type of stamp was inside of it. And as an order would come in, the fulfillment house would pick the right stamp. They would be provided with the label, and they would mail them out from the U.S. The inspectors were amazed when they went in, because they showed them the box that they had taken, and the guy said, "Oh, this is my customer. This is stuff I get from my customer in China. I have some more stuff here. Let me go show you." And it was 7 pallets. 7 pallets of small packets with stamps. If those stamps had been legitimate, they would have been worth over $2 million. So again, how do we prove intent on that? He's just the middleman. He's a fulfillment house. We put him on notice. He turned them all over to us, told us that he was not going to work with that customer anymore, and we do follow up. All right, the picture on the right was another seizure out of LA from Customs. They actually sent it to me, so I took that picture. It was, as you can see, loose stamps in the box. An individual in the U.S. bought them from China and planned on selling them himself. If the stamps, again, would have been legitimate, it was over $100,000 for those coils, based on the amount. E-commerce platforms, websites, we've talked about that. It's the bane of my existence with stamps being sold there. We are trying to work with them. We have good relationships with some of the e-commerce platforms and not so good relationships with others. Some are very good about contacting us if they have a seller that they think is suspect. They will actually conduct their own purchases and turn them over to us for verification. Some have gone to the point of requiring these sellers to provide receipts to show that they bought the stamps that they're selling from a legitimate source. And I will say we have a couple of cases that are ongoing where they've submitted counterfeit receipts. So not just counterfeit stamps, now we have them on falsifying records. So that's very helpful. A lot of them are also doing brand registry. So if they can, if Postal Service were working on trying to get Postal Legal to register the brands, it gives us a little more ability to work with some of these e-commerce platforms. And some of them, bless their hearts, are trying to decide if they want to even allow stamps to be sold on their sites. Technically, stamps are considered currency. Currency can't be sold. You can't go and sell a $20 bill. So if we can get more of them to do that, that is going to help us a lot. We do have Inspection Service and Postal Service and Inspection Service Legal working with some of these sites that are a little less cooperative to try to compel them to help us out. It's a work in progress. I will say that the individual websites are a bit tough because there's not a platform that hosts them. We have to figure out who is actually hosting that website, and then we have to try to ask them to take that website down. Or we have to go through a legal process to get it shut down. So it's a lot of work for us to do. We are sending out the requests. We haven't really done a whole lot of legal action if they don't. I will say ones that we're focusing on, we've seen where somebody has like 9 different websites, different addresses, but when you click on one of them, it ties it and it redirects you to another site. So if we can get some of those where they're linked together, so it's a bigger bang for our buck, we're trying to do that. Public outreach, that's the big thing, especially if we want to try to at some point hold out stuff that have counterfeit stamps. There's a lot of words on here. I apologize, I got a little wordy on this slide. But it's basically talking points for when we talk to customers, talk to the public, talk to the press. We want customers to be aware of what's going on. We want them to know that the regulations changed, and if they use counterfeit stamps, they could be taken out of the mail stream. We want them to know that Postal doesn't sell at discounts. If the discount looks too good to be true, it probably is. They're probably counterfeit. We want them to know that as much as we would love to, we can't confirm stamps for the general public. They can't bring them to the post office. Our clerks, if my people have a lot of trouble trying to validate them, the clerks should not be trying to validate. And we've had instances where they've said, oh yeah, they look good. They're not. They shouldn't be telling them that. What we can do is try to, if they're willing to turn them over, if we have the capability to, we can send them to the lab. We don't want to inundate the lab though. But if it's somebody that we're already looking at, that we're considering having to do a test purchase on, again, that saves us a step. We're telling them that if they do buy stamps and they think they're counterfeit, first off, don't buy stamps at all if they have the discount. But if you do buy some and you think they're counterfeit, don't use them. Take the hit on it. You've got a discount, so you didn't lose the whole amount of money. Don't use them. Contact us. Let us know where you got them. Give us as much information as you can. You know, we get a lot of people that will say, oh, well, I see that there's cheap stamps being sold on Facebook Marketplace. And that's the email. That's all we get. We know that. We need specifics. So the website, or excuse me, the email address is listed at the bottom of the screen. Postage fraud reporting, all is one word, at USPIS.gov. This is the site that we are giving, or the email address we're giving out to the public to report things. We are inundated with reports. We try to get to them. We have somebody that is building a spreadsheet of all of the different sites, especially the websites, that we're going to try to get to as we can. We also have a separate email address for postal employees, for internal or other inspectors who want to report things, just to try to keep it. Now, if you do email that site, you're going to get an automatic response saying, don't expect a response, but we received it, and we're going to try to take a look at it, and if we have questions, we'll reach out to you. So we just don't have time to do a response to every single one of them at this point. But we do get them, we are tracking them, and we're trying to do something with them. So this is one of the fraud alerts that went out that's posted on the Inspection Services webpage. I'm not going to read it. There is, I will just say at the bottom, where you can click on a link to do reports, to report issues to us. It's a different link. It goes to the Inspection Service overall, and then they send it to us. So either one works. It's just the other website, the postage fraud reporting, comes directly to my team. So we're trying to get the word out there. Another thing that the Inspection Service has done is we increased the reward amount. So the reward amount for counterfeit postage used to be $50,000. We increased it to $100,000. I will say that it's for postage or meter tampering is what they call it. But it's defined as the unlawful use, reuse, or forgery of postage stamps, postage meter stamps, permit imprints, or other postage, the use, sale, or possession with intent to use or sell any used, forged, or counterfeit postage stamp or other postage. So we have that out there. We actually have had a few people call that didn't meet the criteria of trying to provide us information. It was very generic. There are rules as to who would qualify for a reward and rules that are in place that have to be met for them to collect anything. And it's up to $100,000. So based on the information that's provided, it's got to lead to prosecution, and depending on what the person tells us, it could be less than $100,000. But we have increased it. So why am I here? You guys are the experts. You know, we want to involve as many people who might have knowledge about this or have thoughts about it. You've given me some good thoughts already. So I am here because you guys are knowledgeable about both stamps, postage labels, the Postal Service, and how it works. We're definitely interested in hearing any thoughts that you guys may have about counterfeit postage. How are we going to address it? If you have suggestions for us, definitely want to hear it.